Hey everyone, I'm Carolyn. Welcome back to another episode of As I See It. So I've been amazed since Biden has been in office at the number of news reports that keep talking about his low approval rating. There's a lot of different issues I have with that. The whole media and how they cover presidents and how they cover everything, but how they cover presidents. One of the former guy's biggest talents is marketing himself. I was a kid growing up in New York, and the Trump Tower and the legacy and the casinos, we all knew he was a con artist. I think anybody who grew up in New Jersey or New York knew exactly what he was about, but he's a master at self-promotion. And I did a video shortly after the election, and I said, we all need to be foot soldiers of the democracy. We need to be foot soldiers of our country, because the media is not going to do it. The media sells shock, awe, sensationalism. They sell anything that stirs our emotion, outrage, whatever that is. And hence the low approval ratings, which I think kind of manifest into lower approval ratings. You know what I'm saying? If the media keeps saying, yeah, his approval ratings are so low, they're so low, people who might be like on the fence or not sure about his job might be like, well, if everybody else thinks he's doing a bad job, I think it's a self-perpetuating thing, for lack of a better word. So I said that we need to be foot soldiers of the patriarchy. No, don't be a foot soldier of the patriarchy. Be a foot soldier of democracy. And today what I'm going to do, and I'm going to try to do more of this, I'm going to talk about Biden's accomplishments, because there are many, and I'm not hearing them on the news a whole lot, not as much as they should be. They should be covering Biden's accomplishments as much, if not more, than they cover the stupid, childish, batshit crazy things that Trump said and did. And they don't. They don't. These things don't get clicked on. They don't get shared. But I'm going to do it today. And I guarantee you, watch the numbers on this video. I guarantee you this video will not get as many views as some of the other videos. And so I'm going to ask for your help in spreading this information. Share this video on your Facebook feed, on your Twitter feed. Even if you have a YouTube channel, you can share it on your community tab on your YouTube channel. And remember some of these accomplishments that I'm going to tell you about so that you can tell your friends and family. You can kind of counter some of the misinformation and disinformation that's out there. So I basically just went to the White House website, and he lists what he has done. I think I got most of these from what he accomplished in his first year in office. I also fact checked them though, just in case, right? Not that I think our president would lie to us, but there are some things that maybe, while they're not lies, they were maybe spun a little bit to sound better than they are, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So, number one, in a State of the Union address, he announced that he would propose expanding disability and health benefits for veterans suffer from 9 rare respiratory cancers. And just recently, within the last few days, the VA delivered on that promise, and they added a rule that they will now cover those 9 rare respiratory cancers that they didn't cover before, that have been proven to be caused from soldiers being in the field. So that is a win. He is protecting our veterans. There's also more permanent legislation bouncing around the House and the Senate to include legislation for toxic exposure, and one passed the House, and then there's a different one that passed the Senate. Of course, I say, most Democrats are behind this legislation, and Republicans, some Republicans are behind it, like 27, I think I saw, but a lot of Republicans are voting against it. Money, budget, we can't afford it. We can afford to send our men and women to war, but we can't afford to take care of them after they come home from what happens when they're in war. In what twisted universe does that make sense? If you can't afford to take care of your veterans, you can't afford war, period. I don't know. I'm sure, like, as far as personal responsibility, I'm sure the Republicans would be the first to tell individuals, if you can't afford the outcome of your actions, then you can't afford to participate in that action, right? That's what they would say, right? Personal responsibility, and you don't even want to take care of our veterans. Number 2, Biden has deployed the most solar, wind, and battery storage in our history. He is the first president in the history of presidents to deploy the most solar, wind, and battery storage for sustainable energy, getting away from fossil fuels. So of course he touts that as a win on the website, on the White House website, and I'll put all my sources, including the website, in the video description below. But he's still very, very, very much behind his goals. He had set some very aggressive goals for getting us more towards sustainable energy, but he's only like, I think, 5 to 10%, depending on what it is, of his goal. So he's got a lot to go on his goal, but he's still making progress, doing more than any other president has ever done. Of course, this is a relatively new thing, so that's a pretty short list, but still, it's a win. Biden has protected more land and water than any other administration in their first year. And this protection is from pollution, making sure our water is safe, protecting our public lands from disaster pollution and things like that. And in fact, one of the first things Biden did is he reversed several major Trump attacks on our public lands, including Bears Ears, Escalante Staircase, and he reinstated the roadless territories in Tongass and other areas. And he added thousands of acres to wildlife refuges. So he has done a tremendous amount to protect our water and our land and our wildlife and protect our earth. On the other hand, this was really disheartening for all of this is a really important talking point. This is not on the White House website. I got it on a website for the environment, for wilderness. Biden actually issued more permits to drill on public lands than Trump did in his first year in office. You hear all of the conservative pundits and news heads and Tuckums and all the other ones, spouting and lying to their audience that this is all Biden's fault. Biden, wants you to pay at the gas pump. He issued more permits in so far, I don't know if it was his first year or so far, than Trump did in his first year. Yeah. So that is a little bit of a backslide into fossil fuels. That's a little bit of a disappointment. So on the one hand, he's issuing permits. On the other hand, he's trying to protect other national treasures, public lands. So there's that. But he is still trying to protect our public lands, but we are a country dependent on oil. That's a sad fact. And it is true that for our national security, we need to not be depending on countries like Russia for those fossil fuels. And you can't just make that change overnight. There's a lot that goes into it politically, economically, socially. It's a tough situation for any leader to be in. So Biden also signed an executive order to strengthen our forests on federal lands and make them and the local economies they support more resilient in the face of continued threats of wildfire. Wildfires are out of control. I am flabbergasted. I'm in New Mexico. It's April and there is smoke in the air. It's only April. What's it going to be like in August and July? It's going to be terrible. And I thought I could escape what's been going on in California and Washington and Oregon and some of the other more western states. It's just spreading. So Biden has taken action, signing executive orders to help minimize wildfires. So according to a news source that's in the description, under Biden's leadership, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Forest Service has developed a 10-year strategy to reduce wildfire risk through science-based fuels and forest health treatments, with a goal of treating an additional 50 million acres across federal and non-federal lands. So he's taking action to try to help the whole wildfire situation that is caused, of course, by global warming. And of course, also on the website, Biden is bragging about jobs and unemployment. This is where things can get a little like, okay, you're spinning that a little bit. President Biden on the website, on the White House website, says Biden's first year was the greatest year of job creation in American history, with more than 6 million jobs created. Okay, sure. 6 million jobs created. That sounds a little misleading to me. When I hear 6 million jobs were created, I hear jobs that didn't exist before, like new companies were started and they had new jobs, but that's not what it means. All it means is that companies are hiring again after record job losses during the pandemic. It's not new jobs. It's not like the economy now has all these new jobs. It just means that the number of people getting hired versus the number of people of losing their jobs, getting fired or laid off. So they're not like brand new jobs. These are jobs that existed before the pandemic. People were laid off and they're going back to work. Okay, so Biden having created the most jobs in the first year of any president isn't a surprise, considering we had the country's biggest health crisis, I don't know, ever, probably. I mean, millions and millions and millions of people couldn't go to work during the pandemic. So that's a little, okay. I mean, it's better than under the former guy, which it means that Biden has gotten us out of the worst of the pandemic, although numbers are starting to rise again because mask mandates are getting lifted and there's new variations and all of that. But the first year and a half that he was in office, he did a better job, through pushing vaccines and paying for vaccines. And he did a better job of managing the pandemic and getting people back to work. So there is some truth in that, though it may not be quite as good as it sounds. He also touts the unemployment rate dropping from 6.2% when he took office to 3.9%, the biggest single drop in American history. Yeah, okay. We know why, right? We know why. I don't think he can take total credit for that. It was the end of a pandemic. So Biden can't take total credit for the job creation number, the employment rate, because of the pandemic, just like we can't blame him for inflation and gas prices and shortages in goods and food and things like that. Same with unemployment claims. So on the website, they say the average number of Americans filing for unemployment has been near its lowest level since 1969. And when the president took office, over 18 million people were receiving unemployment benefits, and today only about 2 million are. Also the biggest single year drop in history. Again, the pandemic was ending, people were going back to work, things were opening up, and that's the reason for that. That unemployment claims number being so low also doesn't include people whose unemployment ran out. They might still be unemployed, but their unemployment ran out. They got fed up and they stopped looking. Maybe they started a business or started freelancing or whatever. There's a lot of variables in that could cause that number to be misleading. But still, I mean, even if there's a little bit of misrepresentation in that number, 18 million when he first took office to 2 million now, there's definitely an improvement there. And again, I think that improvement, just like in the unemployment rate, is due to some of his policies about getting people healthy, about the mandates, about opening things back up and getting people back to work. So there's some truth in that. Maybe under the former guy, if he had handled it better, we wouldn't have had such drastic economic consequences as we did. If he would have pushed masks right away instead of dividing the country over masks, if he had pushed vaccines right away instead of, again, dividing the country about vaccines and pushing fake medicine like ivermectin, which, by the way, I just saw a study was concluded. I can't believe they had to waste energy and resources on a study for this, but they did a blind study to showed that ivermectin, it did absolutely nothing to prevent or cure COVID. Absolutely nothing. It was useless compared to a placebo. So again, if we had leadership during the pandemic that did the right thing for all of us from the beginning, the effects may not have been as bad. So yeah, Biden does deserve some credit for things going north. The unemployment rate falling, unemployment claims falling, jobs going back up, people going back to work, things opening up. So he deserves some credit there for sure, but I think we just have to be realistic about some of these claims. Got two more. Child poverty. So experts estimate the lowest child poverty rate ever in 2021, thanks to Biden's federal child tax cut. So there was another claim that went with this as far as child hunger or family hunger. And they're based on actual studies and reports that, they look at family wellness and well-being and maybe do surveys and things like that. And there is actual evidence that child poverty and hunger, family hunger, child hunger is lower than it has been in a very long time. And this is largely due to Biden's federal child tax cut. He put more money in the hands of families with children so that they could get fed. How simple is that? Not a hard thing to do, right? And I know a lot of you are screaming, socialism, that's socialism. Yeah, we can't feed the hungry. We can't feed hungry kids. That's socialism. But let's overturn Roe v. Wade. Let's let them be born, and then it's okay if they starve to death. Sorry, that was a tangent. Finally, for those budget hawks out there and screaming socialism, Biden cut the federal deficit by more than $350 billion last year, despite giving families tax cuts that feed their children, pay their bills, pay their rent. He still cut the deficit by more than $350 billion, unlike the former guy who gave tax cuts to the most rich among us, kept kids starving, kept families poor, raised the federal deficit. This year, Biden is on track to cut the deficit by more than $1.3 trillion, the largest one-year reduction in the deficit in U.S. history. And in case you are a little unclear about what the federal deficit is, it's just like any budget deficit. We have a federal budget, right? About how much it costs to run our country, to run the government, to run all the programs and everything that the federal government oversees. Say that's, X amount of money. Say it's $1,000. It costs $1,000 to run the United States. How much money are we taking in through taxes, tariffs, fees, etc.? If we're bringing in less than we're spending, then we have a deficit. And here's a fun fact. Under every Republican president since Reagan, maybe before, the federal deficit, the amount we spend versus the amount we bring in, has exploded. And under every Democrat, the federal deficit goes down. Meaning the Democrats don't overspend. They don't overspend in the tune of millions and trillions of dollars the way Republicans do. Many of us have been led to believe that Democrats are wasteful, they're irresponsible, they want to give all your money away to poor people, and in the meantime, our taxes are paying for this ballooning deficit. That is not true. Look it up. I'll put a link in the video description. Look it up. Democrats always lower the deficit. So, and now we have another Democratic president in reducing our federal budget deficit. So those are just a list of a few things that President Biden has accomplished since he has been in office. Look at whitehouse.gov briefing room and you can see a list of his accomplishments. And I urge you to fact check, to do a little research, dig in a little bit deeper at some of the numbers. Nothing is inaccurate. There's nothing here that's a lie, but there are things that maybe are overrepresented a little bit. Let's put that. They're not lies. They're absolutely truth, but unless you dig a little bit deeper, you might not know the whole story. Let's put it that way. All right. I hope you found that helpful. Remember to share this video because I guarantee it probably won't even get 1,000 views because people don't like good news. So share this video. Remember a couple of these points so that you can talk about them and show that our president is actually doing a very good job. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments and your thoughts below, and I'll see you next time.